Art, I had to reach out because you guys watched that same LoveCars video that we did, and talking about the motorsport press conference that Subaru had at the Super Taikyu race. Super interesting stuff. You guys had a very, maybe a different take on it, so I want to just reach out. Let's have a conversation about it.
Yep.
Top of your mind, what are your first thoughts about that?
I guess my first thought was I was surprised that they held that press conference. I didn't know it was happening. Maybe they made some sort of announcement, but I just tuned in to see the STI concept car doing its thing, seeing how it did, and just trying to get any tidbits about that. And then all of a sudden they hit us with this all-wheel drive turbo BRZ situation, which we'll get deeper into. Yeah, it kind of came out of left field for me, so it was a good surprise to have.
Well, and I couldn't believe how many like high-level Subaru execs were at this race and at this presentation. I mean, this was like bigger news than either the Tokyo Mobility Show or yeah. I mean, it was just like this was huge, and they just kind of like put it out there at the Super Taikyu race.
I think the feeling that I'm getting is the closer we get to maybe the end of this year, the beginning of 2027, the more revealing they're going to start to get. So they're almost casual about it now. And what I found really surprising on that the Cars video is maybe the translation. Something got lost in translation, but for the most part, it seemed like they were talking in definites. Like, this is a production car. We are linking racing and production together. And these are, like you said, the higher ups, the production managers and the CTO, the chief technology officer.
Yeah.
So like the big wigs.
These are board
Subaru.
members. Subaru board members
that aren't dancing around this at all. So
no.
Yeah, that's why I felt a little bit more confident in the video that I put out to say definitively, like, this is coming. This is, to me, it's 100%. And so, yeah, that was really refreshing to see. And before we started this video, we were talking about how it just feels nice that Subaru's kind of talk of the town, the belle of the ball, so to speak, because for a change, like, really cool, exciting, good things are happening. It's not just, no news or bad news.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like that. I think, like, again, we'll get to the BRZ. I think puzzle pieces are falling into place. I feel like this is something that they've been working on for a while. There's no way that this has been thrown together in the last couple of weeks or a couple of months. And like that was one of the arguments behind the reveal of the STI Performance B concept, whereas like this is a parts bin car. This is, it's a cross-track chassis that they're putting wide body fenders on. Maybe this was put together last minute, like, or something that very newly was done. I don't think so. I think this has been a couple of years in the making, and it's like now we're finally seeing all the pieces of the puzzle kind of come out, and so we're able to kind of map out what the Subaru's trajectory is, and it's super exciting.
Well, and you made a really great point in your last video, the one that you posted talking about this topic, comparing it to the Celica prototype. And I didn't even think in that direction. I remember when that came out, and I thought it was just an exercise as like a show, a car that would never go into production. Just, hey, look what we can do when we get creative. But now all of a sudden, there's a link to, hey, okay, they were onto something. This wasn't just a one-off thing.
And the key to me is the fact. So this is the 2024 Celica concept car that Vesa Motorsports built for SEMA. I really think that they were onto something back then. Like this is probably right around the time where all of this really started to be solidified, and that was kind of like them planting the seeds, maybe hoping that when they get to this point that somebody would go back and connect all of the dots. But I mean, following that path through to this point, I can't see how this isn't what's happening. Though what's weird is, so then the CTO, Mr. Fujinuki, says, well, but our BRZ wouldn't comply with the 2027 WRC rules, which we can get into because I have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, exactly. So before we dive into all the BRZ stuff, I did have a couple of notes just based on your video. You talked about WRX discontinuation in Japan. That is worth bringing up, and it almost seems like it should be a bigger deal than it is. But I kind of agree with you that it doesn't seem like it's all that much. There were some clickbaity videos that came out, or headlines that say, like, the end of Subaru, the WRX is discontinued in Japan, which means the rest of the world's going to get discontinued. Okay. No chance.
We've been talking about it at the shop. I think it further proves the concept, because the BRZ, B, Boxer, R, rear-wheel drive, Z, Zenith. This all-wheel drive rally car cannot be a BRZ because it does not fit any of that criteria. somebody posted in the comments, and this is the same thing that we've been thinking. What are they going to have to call it? They're probably going to have to call it a WRX, Road Rally Experimental.
Yep.
But they couldn't call it a WRX if they already are selling something on the VB chassis that's called the WRX. So how do you solve that problem? Well, now you move the VB chassis into the STI, and that opens up the WRX nameplate for whatever their equivalent of the Celica is.
And that's interesting, and it almost sounds crazy that we would get an all-wheel drive turbocharged coupe named the WRX, but you go back to GC and the JDM market have it. I mean, we never had the turbocharged one stateside, but there was a coupe all-wheel drive turbo, so it's not that crazy to think that it could happen again.
And the thing you got to remember, why did Subaru leave the WRC in the first place? It was two big reasons. And the first one was their cars were too big. The GR chassis was too big. It was not small enough and light enough to be competitive with the cars back there, 8, 9, 10, and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then like you look at the GR Yaris, like the current like competitive Toyota in the WRC, that thing is super small. I think the 27 regulations are going with a little bit bigger of a footprint of a car, which the BRZ then falls into, as we now know.
It does.
And so
what I found interesting is the Crosstrek and Impreza chassis. Originally, when they dropped the Concept B, my first thought was, well, they're getting back to the WRC. And I think it was you that said, well, they can't because it's still too big in that configuration. I just figured they had the Levorg option, they had the Crosstrek option, and they went with the smaller one to fit within the race series. And that's not a possibility. So that
it's
even further, BRZ is their only option.
Yeah. And there's supposedly when Subaru and Toyota started working together on the BRZ, one of the agreements was that Subaru would not make small cars, like micro cars that would be competitive with the WRC. But then the other part of the issue was the engine, because it was a standardized inline engine that had to be used, and Subaru didn't have one. They want to be a boxer engine, and that's where things get really interesting with this BRZ concept.
So the only last thought I have on the discontinuation is I found it weird. Yeah. Their justifications seem to be sound and emissions.
Yeah.
So, but then why is the Levorg not on the chopping block? Because it's essentially the same exact thing.
But doesn't it have a smaller engine? I thought the Levorg had a 1.6 or a 2-liter.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it also had the 2.4.
I think it's a smaller engine. I could be a lot. Folks, let us know in the comments. But see, this is there again. Like, if this is now going to be what the WRX is, it's a 1.6-liter engine. So it's going to be smaller displacement, better fuel economy, emit like noise. I mean, I'm sure they can tweak the mufflers, whatnot. But it seems like this is going to be something that's going to be more world market friendly, and it's lighter. There's going to be better performance. Yeah,
exactly. And then the only real note I had on the STI, I mean, we could talk about that for a while and how it did at Super Taikyu, but we both did videos on it, so people kind of know. Really, my biggest takeaway was, again, they just were not shy about making the racing and production connection. I mean, they were basically pointing at the thing and saying, we're using this as a test bed for production. And then Fuji Nuki talking about tearing down the wall between the two. So first of all, they're admitting that there was a wall, and second of all, they're being proactive towards linking the two. And what better link than, hey, this is our current race car, it's going to be production. There it is.
And to the wall comment, very fascinating. And I think the thing to watch here in the States and US is, okay, now Subaru Rally Team is using the limited four-wheel drive car. It's very, very production-based, not the Vermont sports car spaceship that has basically nothing in common with a production car. And these concept cars that they built, like the Bradder and all this stuff, these are based on the Vermont sports car spaceship. I think what we're seeing is all of that is going away. I think in part this directive from Subaru of Japan is why Subaru is only competing in the limited four-wheel drive class, not the Rally 2 class, where it's going to be much more bespoke, much more motorsports oriented. If that trend continues, I think that really proves that Subaru is really, they see the value in racing cars and developing cars for racing, that they're also selling that some version of that is available to us as the public, which makes total sense. I mean, that's how you get your ROI on all of this spend to build these race cars, which is millions of dollars. But that's what gets us as enthusiasts excited about it. And then the fact that we can have access to some of these cars, I mean, that's amazing.
Well, it's just funny that personally, I'm like getting old enough to see this circular thing happen, because this is how it used to work, and then they stopped doing it, and now
it
It's like they forgot and they're taking
Yeah.
it back. And my notion is in 25, 30 years, they're going to do it again. And then we're going to see it, when I'm 60 years old, I'll see it happen again. And then I was going to say
Yeah.
that I think somebody's ears at Subaru were burning because of our podcast on what makes a Subaru,
Yeah.
because
Or
we
when
hit
is
on
a
a lot of the
Subaru not
same.
a Subaru? Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
they were getting dangerously close to displaying things that weren't Subarus,
Yeah.
but they're back at
And,
it.
yeah. And the last thing I want to say about the STI before we deep dive into the BRZ is that it's exciting that they're testing a different DCCD configuration, and the rear diff appears to be active.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in that image with it's like Borg Warner,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
it's
Borg Warner
adaptive rear
developed
diff.
it. That's
Yeah.
where it's a bit of gray area where I'm not trying to
Yeah.
jump to assumptions. That feels to me like it's competitive race car only things. I mean, on the other hand, though, you have this parts bin car. You don't want to just put all the old tech in it. You want to upgrade some stuff. So
And
giving us that rear wheel bias and giving us an upgraded LSD
that
could be happening.
update to the STI drivetrain is what like the power, and then that update is what brings whatever this STI is to another level. It's got me super curious about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
So
So
for the
we've got to talk
BRZ, I
about the
did
BRZ. Yeah.
exactly. One thing that you brought up, I didn't deep dive into it as much as you did. So in our video, we spent a lot of time talking about the STI, very little time talking about the BRZ, and yours was kind of the inverse of that.
Yeah.
So one thing I learned is I didn't see that they said it was an inline engine in that. I just assumed it was going to be boxer.
Well, and so here's the thing. So I have a friend that works at Cusco that is from Japan, and so I sent the video to him, and he's because I was just basically watching the YouTube translation, and he basically said that he couldn't say for sure what they said that the engine is, and this is my wonder. Okay, let's even pull back. Let's just talk about the BRZ. There's a problem with the BRZ being all-wheel drive, which is there's no room to make it all-wheel drive. Okay,
Right.
if you look at the side profile of the BRZ and the front wheel, like where the axle is literally right in between the two cylinders. And that's where the axle would have to be and the differential would have to be to make it an all-wheel drive car. So this is where the proof of concept with the GR Corolla drivetrain going in shows that it's possible to make the chassis all-wheel drive. And there's somebody out there competing in the ARA with an all-wheel drive conversion too, but I don't know all the details of exactly what they did to make it work. But the problem with using a boxer engine is that the boxer engine sits in front of the transmission and then the axles come out of it. That's why there's so much of a front overhang on like a WRX and STI, etc. And there's no room for that in a BRZ. So my one thinking, this is to the point of why this all-wheel drive BRZ would not be compatible with the WRC rules, is maybe they're doing something with what they're running in the All Japan Rally now with the boxer engine that would make it not compatible with the WRC rules. But obviously the chassis can't be made to be compatible because Toyota is building the Celica for the 2027 WRC rules.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
That was a point of confusion for me because from what I understand, it's all about the wheelbase. And I made the assumption that between the BRZ and the 86, the wheelbase is going to be the same independent of what drivetrain and engine they're using. Yeah. And so Fuji Nuki did say specifically that it for at least for 2027 WRC rules, it does not comply.
Right. Well, and maybe that's the car that they're running in 2026, but like they might have plans. I had a completely crazy thought, so the problem is with the boxer engine, like and especially in the BRZ, it's so low, it exists where you would need the drivetrain to be. So here's the crazy idea. They put, a hot H turbo on the BRZ GT300. If they did the same thing on this BRZ all-wheel drive rally car, where they put the turbo on top of the engine and the intake was on the bottom, you could actually make room, especially if you move the engine back. Like with a race car, you can move it back more center of mass. So, and because you only have to basically move it back to clear one of the cylinders-ish, you move it back, put the turbo on top, that protects the turbo for one. Oil pan is probably dry sump. Because then you wouldn't have any issues. But if you have a transfer case and a front propeller shaft that goes to a front differential that sits in front of the engine where like the turbo is in the VB, there you could make it all-wheel drive. So I'm wondering if Subaru's playing around with something like that. The other wonder that I have is, could it also just be as simple as for this All Japan Rally, it has more displacement, like it's a bigger engine, and then they're going to a smaller engine for the WRC.
Yeah, That's very possible. And this is it's such a toss up right now because it could
Yeah,
go any number of ways. But I did like your comparison to the Celica test car because you put it back to back with the rendering that we got here at Super
yeah,
Taikyu and I mean down to the roof scoop, the way that the fender flares are shaped, it's spot on.
yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue that that's not the concept. And like, if Toyota's going to come out with the Celica, and we get that as the WRX, that fits way more with Subaru's lineup.
Hmm.
So I mean, I think there's so many pieces of this puzzle that fall into place, and like again, why Toyota would partner with Miata to make the new BRZ or
Hmm.
GT86. All of that makes sense now too because Subaru's just going all-wheel drive with this.
But
Um,
then what does
yeah,
it mean for Subaru and Toyota parting ways and splitting, but still keeping some association together? I mean, could you
they're not
see a
splitting at all.
no? Okay.
They're just splitting on the small rear-wheel drive chassis.
I suppose. I know there's ownership in both
Yeah,
regards, and all maybe I'm kind of falling into the clickbait stuff where they're talking about like, okay, they're totally separating, and there's some drama between the two, and they're trying
no.
to compete, and so
I mean, if anything, like the what makes the most sense is that if Subaru goes back into the WRC, it'd be the GR Corolla engine and drivetrain. But then the confusing part of that to me is then okay, if that's the case, then how do they compete? If everything is so similar, what is the difference? And that's where I wonder if like Subaru is trying to find a way to make their boxer engine work with the WRC rules
yeah.
and be all-wheel drive.
Because does that Celica it runs the Corolla GR drivetrain more or less, and then the
Seems
force
like
or the two cylinder the four cylinder engine that they're developing in the Yaris.
maybe. As far as we can tell by looking at the 27 FIA rules for the WRC, the engine is more open now. It's not, the configuration is not specified, it's just the displacement.
Hmm.
That's one of the big differences for 27.
Hmm.
That would then make it possible if Subaru can find a way to make a boxer engine work,
Yeah.
and well, with that displacement, that they could get it back in to be compliant.
Because I just don't see Subaru running a Toyota engine in WRC. I mean, at the end of the day, it's an exercise in marketing, and they need one of their engines and their all-wheel drive systems in that car in order to sell more of them. Which then brings me
Yeah,
to the next point, and I had a bold statement in my notes that I do not think originally before the conversation started, I didn't
yeah.
think that the BRZ all-wheel drive turbo would ever make it into production. So in my video, I that's where I kind of cut it off. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, it's kind of cool, but guys, don't get excited about this one. I don't think it's ever going to be a production car. I think they're just going to throw it together for racing, and that's the last we're going to see of it. But I think you did make a good point at the beginning of this video about the WRX name shifting over to something, and that would
Yeah.
fill that gap. So if they made their whatever engine they choose, all-wheel drive, turbocharged BRZ, that could potentially hit showrooms.
I think there's a chance, and it would, especially with the STI, like we've talked about. It's if it's coming out, it's making more power, it's going to be more expensive. What about the more entry level option? This could be that entry level option because it's going to be smaller, lighter, lower displacement. It's probably going to be in that like GR Corolla power range, like 300 horsepower.
Hmm.
If the STI is 375, 400, like all of a sudden those two things being on the same on the same menu from Subaru, it really makes sense.
Well, and one of the
I see
original
how it makes
thoughts
sense.
I had about it not going to production is because I thought that the BRZ and the STI would clash with one another. But the deeper that I started considering it, those are two very different demographics. We're talking about a coupe sports car, all-wheel drive, whether you want to track it, whether you want to rally it, it's there. And then you
Yeah.
have a hatchback. You have a five-door, so that's your daily driver. You can fit the kids and the dog in it. You can keep it stock, you can modify it, and they can coexist.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you're affluent enough, you could own both, or
Yeah.
more so, you're probably going to choose one or the other. And it's
Yeah.
just two different demographics, and I could see Subaru selling both of them, and then both of them
It would.
selling very well.
It both makes sense. Both make
Yeah,
sense. And then here's the crazy thing, and I don't want to keep you too long, but I think they're keeping the BRZ. I
yeah,
think you're going to have the WRX, the STI, and the BRZ. The BRZ is now going to be the
interesting.
Zenith. It's actually going to,
Okay.
own that Zenith nameplate.
Hmm.
We're getting the six-cylinder BRZ.
Man, that's one thing I can't agree on the spot because video lives
I
forever, and
know.
someone's gonna go, "Hey, you said it." but
I know.
I'm open to the idea. I'm open to the idea. That one's way out there, though.
With what they said about breaking down the wall between motorsports and production cars, it's like if they weren't thinking in this direction,
Mm-hmm.
why would they have put the six-cylinder in the BRZ? Why would they have not just retired from Super GT racing altogether? Because if they're not going to put it into production, if they're not going to do a six-cylinder engine, why would they keep doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like even though in testing the car was not putting up the lap times, the more that I've seen it, like now it's becoming a front running car. I think they might have a real shot at taking the championship again this year.
Yeah. Well, and the H6 has been historically kind of underplayed. It's a great engine. They just keep shoving them into big Subarus, the SUVs, automatics, and we never have really gotten a chance to see what it feels like in a sports car. I guess the Legacies were probably the closest, like four-door Legacies, but they're pretty big.
But nothing like this.
No, exactly. So there could be a real argument made that they perfect that engine, they throw it into something, and it could be an option. I love H6s. I love the NA offerings, and if you could throw them in something lightweight, all-wheel drive, then great. Another great option.
And as a teaser for the podcast that's coming up, fingers crossed, hopefully tomorrow, we dive into this and we talk about where a six-cylinder BRZ would make sense. And honestly, I think if we have the WRX, which is this small coupe all-wheel drive, the STI, which is going to be maybe tending more towards a GT car, and then the BRZ, which is going to be this lightweight six-cylinder high-revving sports car. I mean, Subaru has got like all three offerings that are very interesting for us as enthusiasts.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that podcast. I'm kicking myself because I remember thinking we were just talking about like dream Subarus or something we'd love to see come out, and I was gonna say I'd just love to see that coupe all-wheel drive turbocharged BRZ so we can go back to the good old days of what we never got. And I felt too stupid saying it in the podcast, so I kept it to myself. And now all of a sudden, a week later, it doesn't seem so stupid anymore.
What's crazy to me is this video literally came out the day after we recorded that. So we recorded it on Friday. The video came out on Saturday, and then I started putting all the pieces together of the weekend. It's like, oh man, we almost have to come back and re-record it. No, can't do that. We're going to put the podcast out, but then maybe, I don't know, depending on what you guys say, maybe we'll pick up where we left off with all this new information. Who knows?
That's right.
So cool. Well, Art, thank you so much for making the time for this quick conversation. Want to let you get back to it, and I'll get to work on getting this out. But thanks so much for making the time. Thanks for the conversation. Thanks for all the awesome work you guys are doing on keeping track of all this news coming out of Japan. There's a lot, and it's confusing, and it's fun to kind of be able to sit down and compare notes here as it was.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you're the trendsetter. You make all the great news videos, and it's got us getting interested in it and looking deeper into it, and if anything, trying to emulate you a little bit. And I think the more of this stuff we get out there, the better it's going to be for the enthusiast world. People love seeing it, and I love seeing people's feedback and learning from you. I learn from the comments. I put information out there, and I never want to be misleading or making assumptions. I'm just interpreting what's kind of coming our way to the best of our abilities, and so are you. And it's just nice to be kind of at the forefront of it. Because I think big things are coming.
Big things are coming, and it is really exciting to be excited about Subarus. It's exciting times to be a Subaru enthusiast right now. There's I think some really cool stuff brewing. So let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for support all as always, and stay tuned with Flat Irons Tuning.